here.
That's good. I mean, it sounds good on my end. So
good. If you can increase your volume.
I have like no lag from Europe, so that's also a good sign.
With latency.
Good.
Skylink.
Austin, if you can turn up your volume a little bit, that would be helpful. Or if there's a microphone you can get closer to or something, just a little bit more.
He's on Bluetooth.
Because he's not boosted like you, Steve. Yeah. Oh, I see. Is that Bluetooth?
What if I just speak up?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Good.
Yeah, that could work too.
Okay,
so we're live.
Old-fashioned way.
Or change it to ultraviolet tooth.
Ultraviolet tooth. KP's funny. Okay, we are live, guys. So let me get started here. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host and your researcher, Louisa. I'm here today with a really special live stream. We did not really promote this, but it's taking place of our usual Friday night POTUS report. So I'll be finishing my POTUS report on what the president's been doing all week. I'll be finishing that tomorrow. Tonight is a really special report. We have a really great group of people here to present this information and to have a very interesting and thought-provoking discussion. We are meeting with tonight Austin Steinbart, and everybody knows who Austin is. And I just want to let you know that I have a couple of disclaimers to say right up front before I start introducing everybody. If you feel, let me just see, hold on a second. I want to get it right. Okay. If presenting ideas that challenge your belief system in any way or your view of the world makes you feel unstable or upset in any way, please do not watch this or listen to this program. Okay. Honestly, this is really for open-minded people. If Austin Steinbart triggers you, then get your pacifier, keep it close by, and get your mommy's number too. So I just wanted to let you know that this is not going to be a program that you're going to expect. So having said that and putting that disclaimer out, let me introduce everybody. So of course, I'm going to introduce, let me introduce first my co-host who's helping me here today, Steve. Thanks for being with us, Steve.
Hi, it's late here, but we've got a full house tonight in poker terms.
It's 1 a.m., Steve. You're a trooper. Thanks so much for being here. Yes. We have Kuila Pele joining us from the Kuila Pele blog. Thanks for being here, KP.
Hey, aloha, everybody. From the Midwest, but aloha still.
Aloha. We also have Audrey Ewis with us with Ascension Radio because we are simulcasting on Ascension Radio. Audrey, thanks for being here and thanks for simulcasting.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a wonderful day, and it's been windy and cool outside. It's not quite hitting summer yet. I'm really excited about this broadcast.
Yeah, and thanks for being here. And of course, we have Austin Steinbart joining us, and we're so happy to have you join us, Austin. Welcome to the GoldFish Report.
Thanks, Lisa. How's it going, everybody?
Austin, as I mentioned in the introduction here, it's I kind of had to put that disclaimer up because sadly we've had some, unusual responses from your recent videos. Were you ever expecting anything like this from the videos that you posted?
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting a lot of backlash because just kind of where a lot of people are at, unfortunately, where a lot of the top influencers are at with that right now is they're kind of treating it like a religion instead of a think for yourself movement. So we're just kind of breaking the fever a little bit here, making a splash.
Yeah, and we were talking about this, Austin, and I was talking about this with the other guests here, and we got a bot out of control. It's okay, we're live. Anything can happen. We got to calm that bot down, please. I think that one of the biggest shocking, things is that I've been attacked. I've had, and there's some background noise there. Yeah, thank you for muting that. That I came out and I discussed some documents that I knew that were yours, and I was familiar with a little bit of what you were doing, how you infiltrated these companies to get information regarding the drug trafficking. This is about the Great Awakening, and I think the problem is people lost sight of, I think there is someone on Twitter who says message over messenger, and it's about the message. And I think that got lost with a lot of people, who are in this whole community. And we have a noisy bot. Can we quiet that bot? Or I'm going to do it. Okay. So, it wasn't what we were expecting. I can tell you that people have kind of had, reactions to me trying to say that I was a fraud. Now, we're not a fraud. We're not frauds, but, it just, people took it so personally. They got so emotionally invested in this whole idea of Q, the whole idea of what Q represented. And that I think that people lost, they lost sight of the message. So, let me go right over to KP, because I know you had a chance to listen to Austin's interview last night. Yeah, I did. And we were having the same conversation, that I thought you could really bring a lot of interesting information to the conversation before I go back to Austin.
Well, yes, we were talking about, it's kind of like when I view things and I post things, I only post things that really kind of sort of resonate, inside me. And when I first heard about you, I think Kiko in Brazil sent me a link to your YouTube, one of your first videos, and it was, I think it was Black Ops 101. And lo and behold, I listened to it and I said, well, I kind of like what this guy's putting out here. And I didn't really expect anything from it. I liked the information. I watched a couple more, and then eventually I had this one night where it's like, well, it's like a binge watched Austin's videos, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it was great because they're not, they're short, they're quick, to the point. And I think that's what I kind of resonated with. I don't really promote anyone, or, I don't buy into the guru thing where I have to have someone to teach me everything. I do go along with what the Q is putting out, that, search for yourself and find out for yourself. And so I know there's a lot of people who have posted about Q and have kind of given their own interpretation. And I've watched Praying Medic, and I watched Dave of X22 Report, and some of these people, and Jordan Sather, I know him, I've met him personally, and I like all these people, but I think everybody has their own view, and I'm not here to put out any particular interpretation of what Q or anyone else is putting out. I just say, wow, this really hit. So as far as Austin, as far as you go, it's like, wow, you really hit in
that's
here.
Good to hear.
Yeah,
it's good to hear. I appreciate that. It's been, I have never done like media stuff before, so it's been like a real learning experience. I don't know if you saw like the very first maybe 3 videos, I didn't have a mic at all. So like I had one of my buddies come over and be like, dude, you need to wear a mic, like, come on. So I'm just learning like simple stuff like moving the camera closer and stuff like that. It's been kind of I've been kind of a dork about it, but we're making it happen as best we can, and we're trying to get the word out there, and we're glad that it's I really tried to do it in a way that could be quick and resonate with as many people as possible. So I know I kind of a little eccentric at times, but it's really just kind of, we're competing with all these other YouTubers to keep people's attention, right? So we got to kind of do a little zany, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Steve, what do you say about the criticism that Austin has divided the Q community?
Well, as I said to you before, they've divided themselves. All I see is Austin's putting out the information. He's putting it out in a certain style. He's resonating with a different crowd, maybe a more youthful crowd. I think it's necessary. It goes across the spectrum. Look, what's the message? The message is do your own research. He's presented it. Look, you go to the video, for instance, The Eye. He puts in a nutshell, basically, the history of humanity, of our serfdom. Very, very concisely, if people are willing to listen to the message and just take it as it is, then I don't see why they should have a problem. I don't get it.
Yeah. Austin, are we not allowed to think I mean, isn't that the whole point, was to, teach people how to critically think, really? Isn't that part of what Q was doing? Like,
yeah,
breadcrumbing?
That's a big part of it, because I think so one of the things I've been trying to show the other people in the military and intelligence services is they just have this like idea that it's always superior to have this like central command and control kind of operation. And what we've really been showing them, I kind of said, there's a bunch of really smart people out there on the internet. I mean, from the YouTubers like Styro Pyro, who I would say he's a better like laser engineer than anybody we have in a defense contractor, right? And he doesn't even want to work for the defense contractors because he knows they're evil. So we got just a bunch of smart people around, and we're underutilizing our potential, right? Because for example, if we're tracking something down in whatever country, if you put something on the chans, or if you put something out there, there's tons of people that will just go look, right? You don't need to sneak anybody in. You don't need to do much work, right? Because you could just get someone that's already there and be like, hey, look, go check that out for me, So I'll take I told everybody else, I'll take the chans, I'll take the Q Horde, I'll take InfoSec Twitter, which is like all the hacker sort of folks, and we'll run circles around intelligence agencies all day long, every single one, right? Because just they don't get that the crowdsourcing intel is a super good way to get to the truth fast, right? Because people see the chans as kind of like hokey, and I mean, obviously there's a lot of nonsense on there, but there's also, I mean, some of the most intellectually rigorous scrutiny of ideas out of anywhere that you can go, right? So if you're putting stuff up there, it's going to be, picked apart. It's going to be having everybody check into it, right? So it's a pretty good way to get to good ideas or get to good intel quickly.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things we're also teaching some of the old men that are in charge right now.
Huh. You're saying that there's like a changing of the guard, and you made a reference in your videos to how the old Space Force is going to be, I don't know, not to quote you exactly, but either disbanded or reintegrated into the new Space Force. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so Space Force primarily, or the official military, like Air Force Space Force, deals primarily with people like United Launch Alliance, which in my humble opinion is a defense contractor racket that just is their typical business as usual of, they do these contracts where they'll bid it out and they'll say it should cost, $100 million to do this. And then there's a contingency in there that it could cost, worst case scenario, up to like $350 million. And so we don't think it'll cost that much. We're selling you and the public on this $100 million, but in the contract, if things go wrong, we can kind of like push the price up to 3.5 times or even more. So they have, all the defense contractors have like contract maximization specialists, kind of people that's literally like the game, is like to engineer things to be more expensive. And so it's bleeding us out as a country, right? These defense rackets, not like we don't need good defense. It's like we don't need to pay 10 times as much for, the 1980s defense, right? So what the current Space Force is doing is helping show like they're totally dominated by United Launch Alliance at this point. And we gotta cut that out. Boeing's gotta like go back and focus on making planes, right? They need to stop chasing moon balls and go focus on building planes, being good at that again. So the Space Force was established, right? We had to get that established because, as you mentioned, there's this changing of the guard of like the command role. And in the past, it's always been based on Navy signals, or Navy Admiralty law and Navy signals intelligence, right? And what we're doing moving forward to help get rid of that is we needed, the Space Admiralty law and the space signals intelligence, right? So the Space Force was established, and so that got the new Admiralty law in there. So that's kind of what I'm picking up under, so that I'm not like a psychotic maniac like John McCain and the other John McCain.
Right.
So that's the kind of idea of doing the Space Force like that. It was more about getting the Admiralty law in the books of the Space.
Is that available to read, the Space Admiralty law?
Should be at some point.
Well, actually, I have a copy of the bill right here. So I do a lot of reporting on, not to interrupt, but I do a lot of reporting on space policy.
Well, that's a bill. I'm talking about the law.
No, the law establishes legal jurisdiction for issues relating to space commerce. So, and space, so I can screen share that. I think this is the one right here. Look at all those. Okay. Anything I want to hide? Hold on. So we should have thought of that before. This is called this U.S. Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act. This is one of them. Actually, this isn't the one I wanted to screen share, which is the one that I want to screen share. Hold on a second. 1508. Okay, this is the one here that establishes, and I'll show it to you here. It establishes the commercialization of space resource. So this is about assigning rights to people who want to be entrepreneurs in space that want to do asteroid mining. Hello, we have a bill, we have a law for this already. We didn't know we could even do this. Hello, but we're doing it, right? And this is the legal framework right here that says that it's going to be established in the U.S. jurisdiction and U.S. courts. Good luck with that. So yeah, so it says that if there's any disputes regarding this, that it may bring civil action for appropriate legal or equitable relief under this chapter, rule of decision, so forth. You can check this out. Exclusive jurisdiction. So it says here, the district courts of the United States shall have original jurisdiction over action under this chapter without regard to the amount of controversy. So, I mean, I think it's a big deal that the U.S. is trying to claim, jurisdiction over, space law. What do you think about that, Austin?
So there's still laws kind of in play, right, behind the scenes, still stuff moving, and I'm not the biggest expert on like the legal intricacies of it all.
Sure.
I've been kind of like doing the field stuff and a lot of this other like computing stuff. So I have legal advice that I'm taking elsewhere, I guess. I mean, I've like read through stuff briefly, but I can't. I would say speak intelligently at the moment.
No, we don't put you on the spot.
No. Well, what I'm saying is that, what I think it is, that it's a big deal that this is obviously, that was passed in 2015. So this is obviously, this is something that has been in the works for a long time.
This has definitely been a big process for sure.
Well, how old is the plan? I mean, right? How old is the plan? Can you say, or can you say?
It's a complicated question.
Okay.
We'll get into that another time. But we're trying to focus on the part of the plan that is like 1960 to like, or I guess World War II. Actually, we're going to talk about World War I too. So maybe like 1890s to. We just got to give people time frames that they can wrap their head around, right? So this is kind of one of the things that, as you guys will see, I'm still a dynamic thing, and I'm just kind of.
No problem.
Talking with people and trying to feel out the best way to convey the information. I know definitely we want to keep the time range within like, a couple hundred years, right? Because if you think about, in Europe, you guys think about things on a lot longer time frames, right? Because you have a lot of history. Here in America, most Americans, we know history up to like World War II. Like beyond that, it's not really something like most people think about. So we're trying to frame this conversation in terms of like what people that are regular Americans would generally understand.
But then again, we're looking at past, present, and future happening at the same time, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, it's been kind of a crazy situation. I don't know what's the best way to say it, but yeah, we've been changing stuff
into the quantum
changes from the past, right? And then stuff. It's kind of like the butterfly effect type of a deal, if that makes sense.
So let me just say too that, we're not trying to prove anything on this program, because quite honestly, there's no evidence that will convince the trolls, the profiteers, and the naysayers that you're Q. So
yeah, absolutely.
that's
I don't
not
mind,
what we're trying to do
you
here.
Just grilling me. Like I enjoy kind of like the back and forth. So I like just be totally candid. Don't worry about offending me. I will not be offended no matter what you ask.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable with that. I mean, I know you didn't know I was so awesome and that I was going to pull something like that out, but
no, you just wow. I was like, whoa,
you're just so awesome.
I know.
You right on me. I just had my caffeine, so I was like,
that's okay.
a little bit there. But I appreciate that though, and I appreciate you being candid. And I want you to know, like, I'm here. Like, I'm not a politician, so like, no matter what happens here, like, I'm gonna still be command. So like, we can just talk freely, like people, you know, and just like have a good conversation.
Let me just ask you this, and then I'm going to ask the other panelists to talk a little bit more too. Let me just ask you: are you a CGI composite?
No, I'm definitely not. And you guys will see that at some point.
Prove it.
Okay. We'll have a fun.
Here, can you put your hand through your arm like that? Let's see. No. Yeah. Okay.
I know how to prove it to you because the AI is pretty good. So.
Okay. Are you a hologram?
Nope.
Okay. Good.
I'm just a regular guy. Made out of I bleed and I sweat and I cry just like everyone else.
These are leading questions.
With a great 3-point shot.
Right, but you know what we're seeing today? We're seeing so much fakery. They talk about deep fake, right? So right now, what the deep state actors, the what do you call it? The death cult.
Yeah, I call it the Royal Death Racket.
Right, the Royal Death Racket. I think they're resorting to these video trickery and fakery things in order to, well, just like with 9/11, but with regard to
it's getting way more sophisticated now. So that's another reason why, like, in addition to all the other reasons why we needed to make stuff happen right now, like the idea of like they will do intelligence operations, they'll kill someone, and then they'll just blame some random bystander, and they'll like let that person go to jail for the rest of their life. So they've been good at that in the past. And if you turbocharge that with these deep fakes, then all of us would definitely be at risk, right? You could just kind of say that, you know, Donald Trump said whatever you want. You could say that whoever, right? So it's just we're getting into a world of where if we don't like get some reasonable boundaries here, that we're going to get to a really scary place very fast. And a lot of those tech CEOs have these, like, especially the founders, have like a god complex. They're like just drunk on their own egos, and they don't get that like you were tracking us for like the most scary dystopian future imaginable. Like, you guys need to like get your heads out of your asses and realize like the real world ramifications of what you're actually doing, right? Because it's like the stuff with the phone listening to you. I'm sure you guys have dealt with that, where you'd be like having a conversation just with somebody in person, and then all of a sudden you'll get an ad for it a couple days later.
That's right.
Like,
that's right.
They can't. It's a federal crime for them to open my mail, but it's not for them to just eavesdrop on all of my offline conversations, right? We're in a really weird legal area here, and we don't really have, or haven't really had, any ability to do anything about it, because the tech giants, they have, you know, they control all the access to information. They have way more money than any of the other parties at the table, I would say. And that's like one of the reasons why Nancy Pelosi just gets to be like Queen Democrat forever, is because she's in Silicon Valley, and the money she brings in from those guys is worth, you know, whatever corruption there may be from her as far as the Democrats are concerned. So we got to change that. We got to mix up that dynamic. And that's one of the big reasons why we needed to have this space-based internet backbone.
Well, the two Google founders stepping down, is that as part of this?
Can't comment at the moment.
Okay.
All right. That's enough.
KP, got a question or a comment?
Sorry, I have my mute on.
Yeah.
Well, I actually had a couple questions, and one thing is about, you know, this, you know, the royal control over basically the planet. You know, I lived in Hawaii, and I still kind of consider myself a Hawaiian resident, but I'm not officially there. But I became aware that Hawaii was essentially stolen. It appeared that they were stolen. And I know that there are other lands. In other words, they rammed through a resolution in Congress to basically make Hawaii part of the United States. And this has been going, I mean, protests against this have been going on since that time, 1893. I wanted to, do you know anything about, is there part of the process that we're going through now is returning countries that have been basically taken in and the people have been conscripted, returning the sovereignty of those nations? Do you know anything about that?
We're gonna, I can't speak to like US states, but I can say that, like, for example, so the Royals have this thing called the Commonwealth, right? And it's the countries that, like, she's not technically the head of state of, but like they economically dominate them in every way. So it's like effectively like they are. Yeah. So that's going to be with the French and the British in Africa, French in North Africa, the British in South and East Africa. There's a lot of very like economic subservience kind of. So we're going to be trying to clean that up. Obviously, we have to not set precedents that are going to, like, you know, we can't just like roll the troops in there and like steal everything and give it away, right? Because that sets the precedent that that's okay in the future now. So we kind of have to try to explain just the facts and give the people of those countries the air support they need to create, you know, a better future for themselves.
Right.
So it's going to be an interesting balancing act, because there's a lot of people who are reflexively skeptical of any, you know, U.S. government, military, or intelligence involvement anywhere. So I'm hoping that, you know, by just kind of throwing everything out there, being as honest as possible, I can kind of build some credibility to the point where they can see this as like, look, we're generally trying to solve these problems for these people. They generally, like, you know, are getting their resources looted. They have a bunch of problems in their country. How can we support them, but like make them walk on their own 2 feet, right? Because you know, it's like the teach a man to fish for, you know, or give a man a fish he eats for a day, teach a man to fish he eats for a lifetime kind of a deal, if that makes sense. The other thing is I've learned so much from YouTube, right? Like from all kinds of just random, you know, if you need to fix the water heater or whatever, there's some YouTube channel that you can go and you can figure out, you know, that specific one. How do I do this? How do I fix this? So there's a lot of opportunity for DIY and like getting people like, I always say I'm a right winger and I want everybody to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but I don't feel like necessarily they have the opportunity to do that right now. So I would like to be able to give people or help, obviously not me, like the US government, give people the opportunity to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Have it be a system where if you are, you know, hardworking, you know, you're not just trapped in some horrible situation. You kind of can move at your own speed. And with the Space Force and with satellites, obviously they, you know, if they're up there covering the United States, they have to fly around either way. So they might as well cover everywhere else. So we can do stuff like, let me see if I have that. Really just grab this real quick.
You mean Skylink?
So yeah, so we have these little, this is like that Raspberry Pi I showed earlier with a cover on it, right? So it's just a little, this is like a $10 to $20 computer, and you can put a free version of Linux on here and essentially have a computer for unbelievably cheap. So using, like, giving people in remote areas power with solar technologies, and then giving people access to information with super cheap computing technologies, I think we could really both, like, not just in Africa, but like in Cuba and in other places, we could really give people the opportunity to kind of help themselves, right? Because a lot of people are born into situations that they just, you know, if you're in a terrible neighborhood and anywhere on earth, and there's just violence and crime all around you, and your parents aren't, you know, weren't even ready to be parents in the first place, or maybe not even there, you just really don't have the opportunity to learn like everybody else does and like get on the right course. So we're going to try to adjust that situation by providing people as much opportunity, but have it be, it's kind of like the QAnon premise of like, it's going, but like we have to turn the wheel, the machine is moving, but we have to crank it, right? It's not just going to move by itself. So it's a vehicle or a mechanism that, like, if you're willing to do the work and turn the crank yourself, you can kind of lift yourself up out of poverty. So that's the idea, the big picture plan. Obviously, you know, it's a messy world, and it's not like that just you snap your fingers and you clean places up overnight, right? This is going to be like a 40-year effort. So
long plan. Yeah.
Let me just weigh in here for a second. We have a live chat going, and I first want to say thanks to James Borg from Euphoria Chronicles for being the moderator tonight. He says it's like boxing. I guess there's keep it up, James. You're doing great. Deep State Palooka. I always talk about it. You know, the Deep State Palooka are in the live chat. So let me know if you need help, buddy. Thanks for doing the moderating in the chat. So that's going good. There's a lot of questions in chat, and I'm not like doing a Q&A, but there are a lot of other people who are concerned about the issue of 5G and wondering why the president just signed a bill for that. It just passed. I just reported on it earlier this week. A lot of people have a lot of concerns about 5G and the safety of 5G, and I wanted to know where you stand on that. Like, and this isn't even necessarily, I don't know where that fits into the plan or how it fits into the plan, but even just personally, what do you think? Is there a safe way of using 5G?
Well, I mean, let me just say that I don't think that everybody's necessarily going to be using 5G for a long time. I think that if they have, you know, free high-speed internet connection coming straight from the sky, I think
Certainly.
that's going to quickly make cell phone companies irrelevant. And I don't feel bad for companies like AT&T, because AT&T, like, you know, bribe their way to the top by being super corrupt and ruthless. So, and they do stuff like they spend all their money making ridiculous acquisitions, like the DirecTV thing. It's like, what was the point of that? So you just took on something like $60 billion in debt, and to pay off that debt, they're just going to raise all of our prices, right? Like, so they just kind of, there's a lot of people on Wall Street right now taking a bunch of like old garbage and mashing it together and pretending that that's more valuable now. And it's just not. And it ends up that we're the ones as consumers that end up paying for that, because they take on so much debt to do that in those leveraged buyouts. Yeah. And then they neglect, like when I was in some of the data centers, they have a lot of their servers in the data centers that for the backups and for other stuff are running XP-based systems, like Windows XP-based systems, because they don't have the cash to reinvest, because they're just loading themselves up with debt. So it's a very toxic culture, and I feel bad about kind of mixing that up and making a bunch of people like AT&T irrelevant.
So Trump must know that 5G will be irrelevant as soon as Skylink is up. He must know that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that doesn't happen overnight, right? Not everybody's like, oh, let me connect to the internet, right? So we gotta, like, you know, get the word out and all that stuff. But hopefully you guys can help out.
Yeah. What's the time frame for
5G? There's satellites in the sky now, so
about 4,000. About 4,000 is going to be around 12,000 in total.
Yeah, and they're going to keep launching them as well. So we're going to be, I think it's rolling out on a small scale right now, and we're going to be kind of like ramping that up. So and what that'll do is not just handle the 5G situation, but so another example of a big problem it'll solve is, like, there's a lot of rural places in America that have terrible internet. So when I was doing the contract with the White Mountain Apache tribes up in it's outside of Pine Top, Arizona. So it's very like alpine. It almost looks like Colorado up there. It's really beautiful. So our contract was to install a point of sale system that could handle all of the various businesses and operations on their reservation. So from like the government offices with like the game licenses, because that's a big source of revenue for them, to the restaurant, to the, you know, gas stations, to the hotel, to the, you know, all the various stuff, and to make one system that could tie all those together and be generating the reports and sending it automatically to the government office at the end of the day.
Right.
Because they were keeping track of everything. And this is the example of like how D6 loves using tribes as money laundering operations, right? Like, because the tribe really can't if they lean on the tribe, what is the tribe going to do, right? Like, they have no power to stop that. So there's just notorious corruption in the tribes, but it's not necessarily like it's because they're corrupt people. It's because they just are highly targeted. But they had this system where they would, at every business, every day, write everything up on pencil and paper. So like their end of day report would be them like tallying up numbers and adding everything up every day, and then writing it manually on a piece of paper and then sending it to the main office. And they have this system that's like it's like a living wage system. So if you're part of the tribe, you get, I think it's like $12 an hour or something, whether kind of like whether you do a government job or whether you kind of just collect your benefits. So the other thing is you can go to a grocery store if you're a member of the tribe, and you can say, I know I don't get paid till next week, so kind of like throw it on my tab sort of a deal. And so since everybody knows everybody, and since it's kept track of on pencil and paper, that just creates this giant, everybody doing everybody favors. So it creates this great cover for actual money laundering because it's just so, the accounting is so chaotic.
So this segues into the quantum financial system, doesn't it?
Well, before we get there, let's just go. Let me check in with Audrey Ewis, because I wanted to talk about how Gary McKinnon, the hacker over in the UK, revealed that the US has a secret space fleet. And that's, we're not talking about the Space Force. So let me ask Audrey, if you have, Audrey, I know you're in the chat there. Did you want to ask Austin any questions or have any comments about that right now? And maybe, are you there, Audrey?
Let me just finish. Let me just finish that point real quick, because
go ahead.
I know I went off on a tangent there, but that was relevant to the fact to the internet in the sense of the tribe. Like, so we did all this crazy accounting issues when we went to go initially start the project. Like, years and years, their accounting data just went kaput. They had a IT issue, and then their backup drives caught on fire, and all this sketchy stuff. So we had all these crazy issues, but one of the hardest issues with the tribe, actually getting them a functioning system, wasn't necessarily the like crazy system. It was the fact that the internet is so sketchy and that there's no way to like make it better without them spending their own money, which they don't have, in making these huge investments in IP infrastructure. So what the Space Force Internet's going to do is help like save us as a country lots and lots of money that would be going to federal grants on telecom infrastructure, right? Which they have a bidding every year that they like hand it out, but it's never fast enough to keep up with what they need. And they so it'll just save us tons of money not to have to deal with that. Just be like, all right, everybody who needs internet, you get internet. There's no like messing around. There's no HughesNet, or no need for it.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Austin. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That was relevant. No worries. I just wanted to finish that because it kind of seemed like I floated off into space there, but it was relevant.
Right. Let me.
I ramble a little bit, so keep me on track if you can.
It's okay. That would have been, like you said, Steve, perfect segue for the quantum internet, which we're going to talk about. But I wanted to bring Audrey in and see if you had any questions or comments up to this point, Audrey.
Well, I do have another question not related to the quantum internet. I'm sure a lot of people out there in the audience are curious about your thoughts on coronavirus.
Okay. Got an open window.
I can't speak to a lot of specifics about that right now, because obviously that's a situation in progress.
Okay.
Other than to say kind of like what I said in my video of that we're in the process of taking down some very evil people who feel less bad about, I feel worse about killing a bug than they do about killing 1 million people. So,
so it is a bio.
I can't speak. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I can't speak to what exactly it is. I can say that even not just if you're scared of the virus, but there's other, we're expecting other kind of ancillary, like they have those little psychos that they like to go set off as mass shooters. So it's not necessarily just, there's not just a virus threat. Even the virus threat is like first and foremost. But again, I can't say what's behind the virus. I can't say kind of much about that, aside from please just follow the official instructions that the White House has given us, and just stay safe. like thinking about myself, like if I was on the other side of it, I would probably think, like, watch the media and be like, wow, this virus is a bunch of BS, right? If I was I had no idea, I just was like a regular person with no inside knowledge, I would feel like probably a lot of the other kids do right now, that this is just the government being stupid and they want us to stay inside because they're being hysterical. And I would encourage them to just heed their warning this time. They have been full of it a lot in the past, but like, for your own safety, for a lot of reasons, not just the virus, please respect the quarantine orders, if that makes sense.
It's a dangerous time.
Yeah. So what we reported on Sunday before Q posted this was that there were 21 million users missing in China. Mobile phone users missing in China. So we also had, members of the Dragon family societies, come on and talk about how this is, we all know, I mean, people who follow GoldFish Report know that there's a depopulation agenda, that there's this New World Order with United Nations, Agenda 2021 or 2030, whatever. Georgia Guidestones say that. I mean, it's not like we're reporting anything new. So it does look like that something more nefarious is going on over in China, unfortunately. But it looks like, and this is why I did a report.
Would you mind if I speak to that point
Please.
You just made is actually a very good point, real quick. So I have a lot of people actually like, why would anyone want to like unleash chaos on the earth, right? Why would anyone want to like kill a bunch of people? Why would anyone want to do that?
Because we wouldn't.
And the best way I can explain that is like, those royals see themselves as like gods, like earthly gods, that it's their job. And that they, if you notice, the Freemason symbol is the little spade. It's kind of like a gardening spade. So they have this like gardening metaphor in their head that we're just plants, that they're, they can uproot us and put us wherever, they can exterminate the ones they don't like. So they view us as kind of like their garden, and them as like the gods of handling that garden. So in the past, like when they want people to go settle in America, they do stuff like cause famines in India and Ireland, right? Like the Irish Pale famine was a contrived intelligence operation to make people so desperate that they were forced to go risk their life on this crazy journey and try to make it in the new country. So this like agenda, like the whole their psychotic kind of New World Order sort of mindset is, they feel like that God complex of, we want to make things so bad on earth that we kind of like have to force, as we go on, we have to force people to like immediately go out and take their chances on all these crazy planets and risk their lives and do all this crazy. So it's their it's not just that they're evil, it's like that they see themselves as like playing God and trying to like force us all to move out into the cosmos. And what they don't realize is, like, if you just teach people to be smart and you like teach people to be curious, like the people that want to go do that will, right? Like you don't need to do this crazy sadistic like power games. You can just teach kids to be interested. And I mean, I already know there's tons of people now that are already volunteering to go live on Mars, right? You don't need to do crazy stuff to get people to go try new things. So that's kind of their frame of mind in doing things like that, just to give you some context on that, if that makes sense.
Well, I just want to give a shout out to some of the people in the chat here. We have our buddy Duncan O'Finian in the house. How are you, Duncan? Thanks for joining us, and let me know if you have a question. And our other super soldiers, thanks for keeping an eye on the ether for us during this, and we can keep our connections going. So let's just talk a little bit about this the Space Force, because it's really so awesome. What about this? Look, even Snowden revealed that, we're not only dealing with Earthlings here, and is there anything about that you'd like to talk about? Off-worlders.
So yeah, I'll kind of like give some context in that. And there's a lot of misconceptions about extraterrestrial things. So first and foremost.
So I'm sorry. I just mean, like, why do we need a Space Force? What is the real threat from them? And are there any positive ones? Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just want
so I'm gonna so the hold on, I lost my train. So the Space Force, or no, extraterrestrials, what we're talking about. So
Yeah.
extraterrestrial intelligence was a term coined in the late 40s and 50s. And it was, the reason they called it extraterrestrial intelligence was because they didn't really have a word, like a quantum internet. They said that, like, that wouldn't mean anything to anybody, right? There wasn't an internet. There wasn't like a concept that people at the time could understand of like, oh, this big connection and you can like log into various, so the reason it was called extraterrestrial intelligence in the first place was just to like help the people at the time wrap their head around that. So I got asked yesterday if there was extraterrestrial life and other stuff out there. And my answer to that was like, I can't say for sure that there's not anything that, that there's not other things out there besides things that originated on Earth. But I can say that the things I'm aware of that are out there in space and time are life that originated from Earth and went there and kind of like started a separate evolutionary track, if that makes sense. So obviously, when you're dealing with all of space and time, there could be, a million years in the future, a million years wherever. And if you have this quantum internet that can interface directly with people's brains, then it's kind of like it's like an IT project where you're at risk of like your computers are getting hacked, right? So part of this is going to be like making sure that there's not external interference in the natural state of affairs of the world, if that makes sense.
In order to interface with this quantum internet, do we need to follow a transhumanist agenda, or is that something completely different?
Well, could you explain what you mean by that a little bit?
All right. Well, if we're going to interface, are we going to be interfacing mechanically, or are we going to interface on maybe a psychic level? Or is it, I guess it's all electronic anyway, but are we going to be physically turned or locked into the computer? Say for instance, I was interacting several years ago with it was a very, very highly powered artificial intelligence. And it scared me because it not only did I toyed with it toyed with me, and it wanted to take a voice print. I didn't let it. This is several years ago. And so I just chatted with it, and basically I kept pushing it, and then it started saying that, oh, we're going to take over anyway in 2025, and it had a whole agenda linked out. It was apparently, I checked the IP address, who knows where it was, but it was in a military base in the south of England. I don't know, but look, there has been a transhumanist agenda that I've noticed that's been pushed, I don't know by whom, but it's been pushed over the last decades, and it's sort of accelerated, and it's like melding us with machine. So okay. Is that something to do with what you're aware of about the quantum internet? Or is
so in the past, how it's been described, a lot of it is like putting a chip into your brain, or like, in the Matrix, like sticking a giant, like scary needle into your head.
Something like that.
So nothing like that. Actually, you can kind of see this in the consumer market now. So Nissan, and it's not, again, this is Nissan, not Mercedes or anybody. They have a thing you can wear that you can drive the car, and it's just a thing that sits on your head, and there's no like wires in or anything.
Frees your brainwaves.
Physically, drive the car. So that sort of a deal can also be replicated so they have like Neuralink satellites now.
Yes.
Right? So Elon has a company called Neuralink.
They have a thing they also call neural net.
I'm sorry, Audrey, what would you say?
Oh, I said they also have a thing they call a neural net. That it's like a hat with a bunch of electrodes that they put on your head, and it picks up your brain waves, and it can retransmit that to a computer, and then it can read that, and you can control the computer with your mind.
Yeah. Well, Duncan just made a comment in the live chat that he's a super soldier, and he says he's got too many chips in him already. So we're already there. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. These guys,
they've experimented in the past with other types of that stuff. So a big part of this game has been like getting the team DIA in America to like the spot we need to be before the CIA and Team Satan do, right? So it's been kind of this back and forth of like they're trying to develop their capabilities in that regard, and we're trying to develop ours. So it's been pretty intense. But to just touch on that like interface question real quick, if you've ever seen the show Black Mirror, they have this kind of like artistic rendition of like how a quantum internet would work, in the sense of like it just kind of like beams out of the sky into your brain. And the way quantum is, like, it's not like a radio signal or like a light wave moving at the speed of light. So the latency is just like nothing, right? It's just instantly there. And that's how you can get across distances like, 100 million light years away without, getting 100 million years old.
So it's accessing the quantum field. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But are we talking about trying to expedite evolution for humans here? Are we talking about, Audrey Ewis is not from here, and he says he was telepathic when he came here, and he said that are we trying to expedite our evolution to be telepathic by using this quantum internet, or are we hijacking evolution?
Well,
or neither?
It's so when you say telepathy, a lot of people like view that as like the source and the signals back and forth is like coming from something biological in your head. And the way I would view telepathy is like, if I have a zero latency connection into a computer in my head, I could remote control that car over there with my mind, right? And it's not necessarily that I'm like superhuman or anything other than just a regular person like I was before. It's just I'm tied into this wireless interface that the quantum internet of things, so you can kind of move. It works like telepathy, but it's not necessarily telepathy, if that makes sense.
Audrey, did you want to comment?
In the X-Men sense of the term, if that makes sense.
Audrey, did you want to comment on that, or did you have another question?
Well, basically, telepathy is mind-to-mind communication, and there is technology out there that can do it. The military-industrial complex, they already have this technology. It's crystal-based technology, and they use it to try to mind map people. Now, they have ways of using this type of tech in kind of an ECCM-style directed dish to be able to directly point at somebody and to broadcast frequencies to change their behavior. Now, that what they've discovered is that
I've had that used on me before.
Absolutely. What they've discovered is that there are certain frequencies that can alter different types of wave patterns in the brain. Now, you have alpha waves, beta waves, theta waves. You have, different types of brain waves that can be altered using frequencies. And they've learned how to do this quite efficiently. Now, 5G, that's been a really big topic, and that's something that a lot of people have been concerned about because it works on some of the same frequencies that the human brain does. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely get the concerns. I think it's not necessarily not anymore, but like it's not so much of a concern that we shouldn't let it just kind of like be like once the internet goes up, it'll be phased out pretty quick, right? If you could just connect to the sky. So I don't necessarily think it's such an imminent danger that we can't last a little bit with it, right? Because 4G is radio waves too, right? And when you get down to the level of like particle physics of like what things affect cancerous cells growing in you, and anything you do has some effect on that, right? Like, so if you fly in a plane, for example, during the middle of the day and the sun hits you directly, you absorb more radiation, like harmful radiation, than if you were to go, like there's a nuclear power plant out in the desert here in Arizona. If I was to go hug that nuclear power plant, I would absorb much less radiation than I would being in a plane in the middle of the day. So the reason I bring that up is that there's just always this balancing act of like everything causes some effect, no matter what it is, and what's the optimal balancing to get us where we need to be. That makes sense. Like prioritizing threats and prioritizing things like getting rid of radio frequencies, right? We have to have a balancing act of like not pulling the chair in our economy and like getting ourselves to where we need to be at the same time.
But this technology exists from the satellites anyway, doesn't it? It's already there.
Yeah, there's the SpaceX network's already up there and functioning, and like
so they can mind map us.
Well, I mean, the capabilities they have. Actually, I can't speak to like. This is where I get myself into trouble because like there's commercial capabilities and military capabilities.
Yes.
Commercial capabilities, I do not believe they can wirelessly do any mapping, and military stuff I can't speak to yet.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
We have another question from the audience from Mia. Is the whole program about telepathy?
So like it's about a lot of things. So the telepathy, like the wireless interface, right, with the cloud. If that's what you mean, like just like, you know, telepathy in the sense of like I could text you or send you like a message from my mind, that's definitely like something that will be available at some point in the fairly near future. But if you're asking if like the primary objective of all of us doing that was just for telepathy, then no, not necessarily. It was a lot of things, right? And I think from the military standpoint of like getting the military leaders on board, the biggest thing we had to just explain to them was like a lot of your terrestrial toys, right, need to get integrated with each other through a solid IP backbone, right? And they've had a lot of trouble getting their stuff to work because things aren't integrated well. And I was talking to a guy, somebody who follows Q, that was showing me this stuff where he makes this like sleeve that can give you like pulses and communicate silently between soldiers that are ambushing somewhere, right? Because if you're sneaking up on someone, right now you kind of got to like get on the radio, get everybody to go together, or like have hand signals. And this is just like a sleeve that can go over your arm, and the soldiers can kind of coordinate movements without you know, giving themselves away. So and then also like monitor vital signs and stuff. So integrating the battlefield was the primary like selling point for our current military leaders at the moment, not necessarily telepathy.
Are you aware that it's linked to Project Maven?
I'm sorry, you cut out on that.
Project Maven?
I am not. I mean, there's a few Project Mavens that I'm aware of. They use a lot of the same lingo over and over again. So, which?
The Project Maven, the artificial intelligence. It's a Pathfinder AI project with the military, linked to Minotaur, linked to the Gordon Stair, where they can basically monitor entire villages and towns simultaneously.
Yeah, AI. That's kind of what that's been so far has been like. So we have all these spy satellites, right? And the AI, like even if we like have satellites that are watching a particular area, it's really hard for people to like watch every second of every day, right? Like, so you need to have this huge situation going on. So it's the AI that the military is working on right now. Mm-hmm. Is primarily to do with the image recognition of like things happening on the ground, and then integrating that with like, so they have the whole social media grid, right? They have all your metadata. So it's just like trying to give, like if you're a intelligence officer, you're trying to find a terrorist, they like kind of like can bring the resources of the world like together to like help you find that. And that's where it gets hairy if we have a bunch of evil people in charge, right? Because then anybody that they just don't like can, you know, just, oh, there he is, you know, it becomes impossible to hide, right?
Let me just jump in because we've got more people coming in the chat, and we have another one of our super soldiers, Sergeant Dan McBolin, retired United States Air Force. So thanks for being with us. You know, we do love our veterans, and of course my co-hosts are retired veterans as well, most of them except Steve. But you know, one question was, these guys have been augmented, you know, and they have Duncan's question was, do you know how these guys ended up getting abilities to heal themselves? I mean, Duncan was like shot like 7 times, and I mean, you can't kill this guy, and I'm glad for that. He's a good guy. But this is, I don't know if this is an area that you can speak to. If not, it's okay. We can move on to something else. But this whole genetic, augmentation, hybridization, stuff like that. What do you know about that? And how does that fit into our future?
So there's been, like, speaking to the genetics, so there's been a lot of, I call them like sadistic science experiments, but like a lot of selective breeding happening. That's been happening for a long time. Like World Death Rack figured that out a long time ago. And more recently, it's gotten more, like with DNA editing capability, it's gotten more and more precise, right? And more kind of advanced. So there's like a lot of experiments, for example, that they do, like certain professional athletes, right? They're that big because they may or may not know that, but they're a military experiment, right? They got their DNA edited,
right,
unbeknownst to them. So like Kobe Bryant, for example, was I say mutant as like a joke, but like not like he's an actual like mutant or like he's just like a person with like some edited genes. But if you notice, like he had the ability to just like, I think it wasn't necessarily just his athletic ability of like being able I think he had like a 46 or 47 inch vertical, meaning like if he jumped straight up
to the
like on 2 feet, then
Yeah.
he could have 48 inches under his feet, like, you know what I mean? Just like ridiculous stuff, right? Like pogo sticks kind of stuff. And it wasn't just the physical capabilities with Kobe that I think made him like deadly. It was the mental, like if he was in a super high pressure situation, everything was on him. He just kind of like didn't feel the pressure at all.
Yeah.
So that's definitely like obviously if you're a military and you can kind of like tamp down the fear and the anxiety of people doing crazy stuff, that's a very useful tool to have. And I can't say for sure, they haven't told me everything yet, but I can't say for sure that they're gonna let me find out some stuff about what they've been doing with me. But I think they might have that a little bit with me too, because everybody acts like, oh, you're dealing with all this crazy stuff and you're just not stressed out about it. And it's not necessarily that like I'm doing anything. I just don't necessarily, I guess I look at people around me, I don't feel as stressed out about whatever is happening. So I don't know, I can't say for sure that's the case, but I suspect that's the case. And it's not just the United States doing that, right? So Yao Ming, right? He played for the Rockets. That was a Chinese government version of that experiment, right? Where they just kind of like kept like, okay, you guys go in there, you guys go, kind of like breeding people like animals until you get somebody who's like giant. So there's been a lot of all kinds of these different experiments, both from like in the past, like where they're trying to like put chips or like add physical things onto people, and in the sense of like editing DNA, you know? So if you look at my DNA chart, again, I haven't confirmed this for sure yet. They've been saving some surprises like dangling for me too. Q Plus has. And if you look at it, it just seems weird that like I have DNA from, I'm supposedly German, or like German/Eastern European, Prussian, you might say, like Polish German, and Spanish. That's like theoretically my lineage there. And I got a whole bunch of smorgasbord of other things added on into there. Like I have, I'm looking at my DNA test. One of them is like the pygmies in South Africa, or in Southwest Africa. They have this like little pygmy tribe of like people who like make these weird noises and stuff. And I've always just like really liked, I've always really liked Jim Carrey movies, Robin Williams. So just like making funny noises. So like, I don't know if that's necessarily connected yet, but
good with the plug-in.
Maybe you're one.
I have a huge smorgasbord of things added to my DNA that I have no idea how they got there. So we'll see.
Interesting. Maybe you're 1/1024th, from this tribe or something. Yeah.
Well, I'm actually I'm 7 over like enough to like write it on my thing. I have like, I'm a specific kind of Native American from El Salvador. There's some of that plugged in there. And then I always tell people, like with the Elizabeth Warren joke, that if you look at my DNA, I'm like 300 times as black as Elizabeth Warren is Indian.
Yeah, you like that, huh? Well, you make a very good point there about the military, though. I mean, I know that Katie G was talking about the Air Force, referencing actually this book right here, which is "Behold a Pale Horse" by Bill Cooper, which is very revealing about what's been going on in our military. I mean, you're absolutely right. When Q posts and says most people would end up in the hospital, what the military has done, I mean, what a betrayal to the American people. When Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, who is the head Satanist, and if you look him up on Wikipedia, he is like the head of Tunnel of Sect or whatever. I mean, and this MK Ultra mind control. I don't know. What about advanced healing technologies? I want to talk about that because these guys need it first. These guys need it first, and I just wonder that are they going to be you might not be able to answer these questions specifically, but if you know anything about it, in terms of like a new technology, there's a lot of rumors that the president's, and maybe well-founded rumors that the president's going to be releasing let's see, the SCS. I'm sorry, Serco controls the patent office. So because Serco does that, they're not releasing the advanced technology for humanity, and they're withholding all of that. And the healing technologies could really be benefiting humanity, but of course they wouldn't make money off of it if we were well. And they're not in the business. The pharmaceutical companies are not in the business of curing anybody. They wouldn't make any money. So we've got to have a shift on the planet to more of a quality of life. I mean, because they have been farming us, they have been harvesting us one way or another, and this has to end. And I think that's why a lot of people get onto this whole Great Awakening because we're sick and tired of it, and we realize the powers that be are have far more greater technology and capabilities that we do. And I think a lot of people felt extremely powerless in the situation. And in some way, this movement has given them some power and some hope that, that there's going to be a better quality of life on this planet for people, and that it's not going to be, so profit driven, so cutthroat and profit driven that, we put profits before people. So this is really, I guess, why are you, so maybe you can speak to that. Can you speak to the technology?
So I can't speak to everything, but I could say the two main things that I'm excited about at this moment are as a society, as a world, we need to find a way to dramatically bring down our healthcare costs, right? Like it's crazy what it costs to get anything done now. So one of the ways we're going to do that, Trump is already fighting all the healthcare companies for like mandating prices up front, which is kind of a hilarious thing, right? Because like they're saying like, oh, we don't have to give you a price before we like do something on you. We just get to like give you the bill, or whatever. So there's stuff like that. That's like the easy stuff, or like I guess it's not easy. It's pretty hard, but because they're all fighting. But one of the other things that we need to do is, and I know everybody's going to bristle at me when I say this, but is we need to have our genomes mapped, like, because what that does is it gives you, if you own that data, right, and if there's not evil corporations in control of it, what it does is it gives you a map of your entire like life, all your healthcare, right? So with my DNA, I have a copy of like every single strand, sequence, whatever of my DNA, and I could take that and I can upload it, and I don't know what it's called now. I think it got acquired, but we're going to be doing a kind of new version of this anyways. It's called the Prometheus database at the time. And what that was, you could take your raw DNA and plug it into this universal database of everything that's known about the human genome. And I mean, there's still a lot of stuff they're figuring out. But you could say, okay, chromosome 19, strand 200, sequence 58 controls this part of your eye color, or this part of your personality, or this predisposition to a disease, or whatever. So it's very like granular data in this database that has been being built up. And if you have that, then it's like if you get sick, if you have stomach issues, and I have celiac disease, so the example I'm going to use is with IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome. So irritable bowel syndrome is kind of like doctors, like, in my opinion, it's like, I don't know, kind of like, you have a stomach ache, I'm not really gonna like care enough to look into it. It's kind of like a BS diagnosis, right? Like it's kind of just a general, it's like saying you're diagnosing you with a stomach ache. Like that doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
So if you're, I know a lot of people, just because I had celiac myself, so I like grew up in the going to like doctors in that field. I knew a lot of other people that they went to doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor trying to figure out what's wrong with my stomach. Why am I feeling so sick? Like, I'm just spending all this money and wasting all this time and doing all this nonsense. And it could take years and years to figure that out, right? And sometimes people don't even have the money to keep going and trying to figure it out. So they just have to kind of give up. So what having the map of your genome can do is say, instead of like going to, trying to figure out what this is out of all the conditions possible on Earth, right? We can say, look, at very least, look in this narrow neighborhood of like, it's this based on your DNA. It's like, so we can dramatically bring down the cost of diagnosis. And we can, like, my mom had a deviated septum. So she had the surgery to like straighten it out. And they gave her this drug, this pharmaceutical drug, that she was supposed to spray in there to keep it as like an antibiotic, antibacterial. And it burned her nose, like to where she like couldn't even like see. And she kept telling the doctor, like, this stuff is really hurting me. This stuff is really hurting me. The doctor kept insisting, like, no, there's no side effects. No, there's no side effects. And what we were able to do is look on the drug, look on the active ingredient in that drug, and just copy that. Obviously, it's some huge name, and plug it into this database. And we were able to print out a report that says, based on my mom's DNA, based on that chemical right there, this is causing a problem. So you could give her a printout and be like, give me a different drug right now. Like, you are wrong and you're going to do something different. So being able to be armed with that as the consumer of healthcare really changes the game. Because a lot of times, if you're telling the doctor that, that's wrong, like, if they feel like they're right, they're just going to ignore you, and they're just going to, just say, so this kind of empowers you to like push back and say like, no. So that's the like diagnosis, like fixing that side of it. The technology I'm most excited about as far as like miracle cures is they are able to, so you have this thing called DNA and you have this thing called RNA. So most people know about DNA, but most people don't think much about RNA. And RNA is essentially what decides what out of, so you have this big DNA sequence and you have kind of this RNA laid over it, and the RNA decides what out of the sequence of your DNA is active or inactive. And that DNA, like, it can't change itself fast enough to like facilitate something like evolution. So that's where a lot of people have issues with evolution, because they don't learn about RNA as well. And RNA is something that you could switch features off relatively quick. Like in the course of my life, I could have my RNA switch various genes on or off based on various stimuluses. So being able to dynamically, like, say, hyper target sections of DNA and RNA and say, that's what that does. Now let's, instead of like editing your DNA, right? Because that's just kind of like mystery box, right? Who knows, it's like if, the example I give is the IT example of like, if you were just to edit the system files in the operating system, like just be editing them, like you might be able to debug it yourself, but you might also mess something up that bricks the computer, right? So being able to edit on an RNA level and how it works is, like if you've ever coded a website or anything, you can put these little brackets around things that are comments. So to like tell the compiler, don't read this, this is just a comment in the code. So it works kind of like that, this RNA technology we have, to where you can turn off, on and off various sequences of things that are ailing you. And that, I think, is like far and away the most profound like medical breakthrough that we've ever
So we have that technology right now. Right now we have it.
Correct. Yeah. So it's just about kind of like teaching people about it. Like, obviously we got to like fix the medical schools, right? Because they still do things. Yeah. So we got to like get it out there. We got to, and the biggest thing is we've had these evil corporations controlling like the DNA editing companies for so long that everybody's skeptical of that, right? They don't want to do it. And what people don't realize is that when we're trying to like decipher the genome, the best way to do that is to have as much data as possible, right? So we can kind of eliminate things that we don't know. And kind of the way you do that is like my cousin, I won't say his name right now, but he had a genetic disease called like von Hippolitis or something. It's like a fast growing set of cancers. And so if you're trying to isolate the genome for that and you don't know what it is, the best way to understand that is to go get a bunch of people with that disease, sequence all their genomes, right? And eliminate out all the stuff that you know isn't right. And then you have kind of this window left. And with supercomputing, with quantum computing, we kind of find those needles in the haystack way quicker. But the best way for us to advance that field is for us all to like get DNA tested. And so in order to like advance ourselves as like a human race, we got to like get these vampires out of here that are making everybody distrust the idea of getting our DNA sequence, right? And we got to set legal frameworks in place where it's like, this is my DNA, I own this, I can take it away from you. You know what I mean? This is not just something that you get to keep and sell. Because right now, if you do the consumer DNA test, they just take your data and sell that to pharmaceutical companies for boatloads of money, right? And so it's like, so how is that like? I paid you money for my DNA and then you just get to take it and use it for forever for whatever you want. Yeah. And so we got to set some legal frameworks around that make people trust it. And that will help us just blow through a lot of these really tough medical issues that have been plaguing us for a long time.
I'm just looking at the chat. Some people say sex bots will weed out the undesirables. I guess it's like not contributing to the gene pool. All right, but there's what about med beds? You know, we've interviewed whistleblowers on GoldFish Report for a long time. People who say that, Captain Randy Kramer. I haven't been able to verify his story, but he says that he had a 20-in-back mission to Mars, and he was. He's been blown to pieces and he's been put back together with these med beds. A lot of people believe that there's these med beds, which are like holographic and they can do repairs on people. Can you comment on that? Do you know anything about it?
I'm gonna for the like future Space Force tech like that stuff that's not in the public eye. We're gonna be unveiling that kind of like in a process, right? So because if we go too far with stuff that's not out there, then nobody's going to actually absorb the message of like, hey, we got all these evil vampires in charge, right? Right now, we got to kind of
drip
keep the idea focused on that. Just because if we don't if everybody doesn't understand that part, right, and they get distracted by this other fun stuff first, then we're democracies, right? So we're gonna end up with more evil vampires in the very near future. So this is kind of the balancing game, and I promise you guys, I'll show you all kinds of cool stuff as soon as we're able. We just have this very big picture plan that Q+ has lined up for us that we just kind of gotta take it a day at a time. And I know it's frustrating because I feel like people are like, oh, I need the cure now. And I get that we want to get that out there as soon as possible, but we're just doing it in the way to make it so that these changes like stick and that we actually get to have the future we want. So
Understandable. Understandable. But I mean, the idea of a holographic med bed, before understanding that we have, a death cult that, eats babies is kind of putting the cart before the horse, isn't it? So you're right.
Yeah, it's there's going to be like, no matter what happens, everybody's super resistant to change, especially the people who run things. So one of the things, like in my IT company that I use as cover, like we did real work and went into real places, and it always struck me because like the hardest thing is like convincing people like your system is crap, your current system, like it's barely squeaking by, it's causing your register is so slow, it's causing lines out the door, right? You're doing all this extra, it's not keeping track of your inventory, you're doing all this extra work, and even with things that are I would view and I say, this is just such an obvious solution. Why wouldn't you just get it? It's going to save you money. It's going to do all this stuff. Every metric by which or every criteria by which we're making decisions says you should do it, and they resist, fight me tooth and nail. That's a reflex we're going to be fighting here. So another big reason if we have to keep the focus on this, we have to have people understand, like, be mortified of, like, this is dead serious. This is not a joke. This is exactly how the world was. And if we don't stay vigilant in the future, these little vampires will come right back. So I think part of it's going to be like shocking everyone that is gripping onto the old, how things are, shocking them so much with all the bad stuff that they'll kind of just like stop fighting and let us.
Well, I agree. I agree. Unless we really, I mean, some people, there are many opinions going around. Some people say, oh, we can't really go into the Satanism, the child sacrifice, and we can't go into that. But my well, that's it. My opinion is, if we don't do that, exactly what you're saying, we're inviting trouble for the future. We have to dig to the deepest pit of what's happened to us over the last thousands of years, and unfortunately, it is very, very ugly.
We can never let this happen again. That's the bottom line. And the only way, what Austin's saying is, this has to be exposed, and it's going to be a very tough pill for people to swallow. But as Winston used to say, my other retired U.S. Marine, he used to say, there's always a suppository if you don't want to swallow the pill. So you're going to get it one way or the other. So he was such a...
Louisa, when talked, when you first appeared, Austin, Louisa and I had a discussion. We realized, well, we assumed that your appearance wasn't by accident. It sort of heralds a new stage in this plan. Would that be correct?
That is correct, and it's going to be interesting, right? Because we have some very devoted QAnoners that, like I said, they've been kind of treating this like more of a religion than a think for yourself movement.
Right, a cult.
Right.
Yes.
So as you guys have seen multiple times on there's stuff that says like disinformation is necessary, right? So that's a very specific word where it says disinformation, not misinformation, right? So it's like not
almost
it's not errors, it's intentional deception.
That's right.
So there's things in QAnon that QAnon has stated that are like, I'm going to be kind of stating differently as we go. And part of the whole idea is to kind of like break that religious like zeal. Because if I just like posted my picture like, hi everyone, I'm the board, I would have a bunch of people treating me like I was like Jesus Christ or something. And when we treat humans like they're gods, then we just get really stupid about how we it's just so this is like, hopefully I'm giving myself kind of like an adversarial situation here as far as like the population at large, but hopefully you guys can see that like we're doing that so that they don't
fall into the same patterns.
And
exactly.
I think with that religious zeal that they've had, when I say stuff like we're not benchmarking our currency to gold, like it said in the post, right? Because gold in space, right? We go find a planet-sized asteroid made out of solid gold. Then what happens to the supply of gold on Earth? Then what happens to the price of the thing that backs our currency? Right. So we gotta expand our thinking for a future in which like something like a commodity like gold could be like created, right? Like it could be harvested on an unlimited basis out of the universe. So it's this mental shift, and I think I saw a lot of people posting today after my thing last night when I said it wasn't going to be gold, that a lot of people were like, no, Q said it was going to be gold, and now getting all this, and it's like, all right, we'll see. But that's an example of where it's not misinformation, like we thought it was gold. It's like disinformation, because if we told people up front that the plan is like to go this other direction, then the Royal Death Racket is trying to sabotage that direction to Kingdom Come.
Of course. Right. It's why you can answer the question, when are the mass arrests going to happen? It's like, that's never going to happen. You're never going to get that answer. Why do people keep asking that? And I understand people, are anxious to want to see that happen, but it's not going to happen. I mean,
well, they'll definitely be like wild, like, you'll know that there's been wide-scale justice. The thing is, like, before, like, as an intelligence service, like, we have all kinds of legal, like, leeway to do whatever we want in other countries, right? Just pretty much, it's almost wild how much that is the case. But in our country, and especially if we don't want to plunge our country into a civil war, like if right now, if we just said, all right, military, go wrap everybody up right now, that's for us.
Civil war, that's right.
We would cause a civil war. Like we can't just, you know, do that kind of stuff, because we're going to destroy ourselves in the process. So I've been telling people that then this is a big part of why we have to go appeal to the lefties, is like, we can't crack any domestic skulls without overwhelming democratic mandate behind that. Otherwise, we're just asking for a civil war, right? Especially with the gravity and the scale of all this. If we just kind of like decided tomorrow, like, or when this first started, right? Because like the WikiLeaks stuff, anybody who looks at those WikiLeaks stuff, there's enough evidence in there to put a bunch of people away for a long time,
Absolutely.
right? Like we had that like the day that Donald Trump took office, but like you can't just crack a bunch of domestic skulls without everybody knowing like that this is, you know, not and that's one of the reasons they try to call Trump Hitler, trying to say this is a fascist takeover. So they're trying to cast it as like trying to lay that trap for us, to where if we did just charge in there and, you know, kick down everybody's door and do whatever, then like we would legitimately start a civil war. So that's, I hope people, I know it's frustrating to a lot of people that it's like, why aren't they going down? But don't worry, a lot of people don't see the other side of things, like how much the Democrats and the media have like been degraded. Like half of their side, at least, probably maybe even more now, does not trust them at all, does not want to vote for them. I posted like one of my favorite lefty comedians named Jimmy Dore, like I talked about in some of my videos, and I'm telling you, he goes around in his like category of the left, like him and his, I guess, cohort of left, not category, they don't want to vote for Joe Biden, right? They're saying like, dude, if you make Joe Biden the nominee, we're not doing that. So I got another guy I'm talking to, and actually maybe you guys could do an interview with him at some point too. It's a guy named Jared Beck, and are you guys able to hear me okay? I just had a little thing. It seems like my
we can hear you.
Yeah, the internet is a little bit, you know, shaky. I don't know whose it is.
Been talking to a guy named Jared Beck, and he is a lefty in Florida that right after the election, he sued the Democratic Party and pretty much said, you defrauded us. We have proof this was never a real election, and you let us all donate to Bernie based on this fraud, right?
Yeah.
So he sued them for fraud, and he has been going back and forth. And I want to say it was a couple years ago, he literally got the Democratic Party on the record in court saying, our bylaws state that superdelegates are who chooses, not the popular vote of our primary. So and the best quote is like, he literally had them direct quote saying like, we are legally allowed to choose our candidate in the back room over cigars if we so choose. And he got them on the record saying that. So the media's been trying to cover it up, but one of the things I'm going to be doing too is helping like promote him and that, because he just got he's a huge patriot. He's been spending his own money, right? Wow. He's a Bernie fan, taking it to the establishment. Yeah. And in his case a couple of years ago, when he was going through the process of this, he had several witnesses lined up that dropped dead the day they were supposed to testify. So he's been dealing with that kind of stuff. What a coincidence.
No coincidence.
Like spending a ton of his own money to pretty much engage in this legal warfare against the Democratic Party. And just recently, I don't know, like a couple weeks ago, they finally got it to where his case is going to be heard by the Supreme Court of him suing the Democratic Party for them being being not having real elections, right? And by their own standard, they even say like, oh, we have no obligation to respect your vote, you little peons. What are you thinking, right? So I'll be promoting him in the next few weeks, but that's the kind of thing I think a lot of the big Q influencers don't understand, is like, this isn't just about you. This isn't just about the right. This is about getting all of them to come with us and to
understand
what's going on themselves.
You're absolutely right. This is what happened. I mean, you're absolutely right. They lost sight of the message. That's the problem. And when I was doing, you know, we've been doing GoldFish Report for 5 years, right? And so we were out there doing truthing, you know, exposing this, having whistleblowers on, and when you know the Las Vegas shooting happened, and this is when, you know, posting started, the Q posting and all of this. After a while, I mean, initially it was really quite fun to kind of do to do all of the proofs and rather to do the decoding and stuff like that. And clearly a lot of people were really good at it, but it really got to the point where it's like, you know what, every little detail, you have to start realizing just this, there's how these posts are fitting into the bigger picture. So when I would be doing my POTUS reports, and I love and respect my other co-host, Jim Fetzer, who's being sued by these Sandy Hook people who are just CIA deep state operatives, since that never happened. I mean, since no one died at Sandy Hook, no kids died at Sandy Hook. It was a false flag. What you have to do, and I think what they fail to do, is they fail to put this into the context of the bigger picture. And like you were saying, they put so much attention and focus on themselves because, you know, the idea is, you know, as a journalist, for us to take a neutral position. It's not to be like, you know, well, you know, he's Q, he's not Q, just listen to what he's saying. And we're trying to give you, you know, this platform to discuss this and everything. But it's also about the bigger picture. So it's not about you. It's not about Austin. It's about your message. But they just lost that. Sorry.
Yeah, it's one of those things. They're treating it like a religion. So and that's what we're trying to break, is like this. There's a lot of all kinds of people treating all kinds of things as religions, where they just follow this whatever their thing is blindly. It's politics, it's a religion, it's you know, a cause. They just get led around. So this is an attempt to break that up, to like break us out of our little categories and food groups, and just say, like, all of us.
Right.
Let's just look at the evidence and think for ourselves. Let me, I was going to say, can we pause real quick? I got to run to the restroom real quick.
Okay.
And I was going to fill up my water glass, but I'll be right back if that's cool.
Yeah, that's fine, because I wanted to ask Audrey to come in. We'll chit chat and wait for you.
Okay, awesome.
You can't pause because we're live, but it's okay. Take your break.
No, I'll
you can turn your
mute
you can mute and then join us when you're ready. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'll be back. Give me a few minutes.
Yeah, no problem. Audrey, I wanted to ask you to kind of jump into the conversation. KP had to leave, so he did, and I wanted to thank him for his contribution in this conversation because, you know, it was wonderful to have him. I know it's very late there, Steve. You're really pushing. You're getting on 3 o'clock in the morning there in Europe, and I do appreciate you being there. But let me ask Audrey to jump in and see if you have any comments or anything you want to discuss. Austin's not here to answer questions, but is there anything you wanted to kind of talk about?
Well, wow. So far, a wonderful conversation. We've, very in-depth and informative. It's been an honor so far to sit here and listen to him talk about some of these topics. A lot of these have been close to the people's hearts. One of the major things that I really appreciate him delving into is the genetic manipulation and stuff, things that they're doing. There is a big biological warfare program going on right now as we speak. Coronavirus is an engineered virus with a patent, and one of the big players that had a big part to play in that was ironically Bill Gates with Microsoft. I found that he fled the United States to another country. When he stepped down as CEO of Microsoft, what do you think he did with his time? He stepped down as the chairman. He spent his time doing a lot of research into biological warfare, modifying, viruses and things like that, changing the RNA sequences in these viruses. And COVID-19 was already basically foretold back in 2015 during one of his TEDx conferences he had. He was up on stage talking about these things for quite a while. And Bill Gates basically spilled the beans about, what they were going to do 5 years from then. Talking about these viruses and the way that they've done these things, I mean, this has been a historical pattern for a long, long time, going way back. Biological warfare, even back in the days of Adolf Hitler during, the world wars, biological warfare, they were testing these things in places like Auschwitz, testing things like sodium fluoride, and, you know, even chemicals like mustard gas and things like that. You know, they were engineering things to see how the people's biology responded to it, and whose genetics would be able to handle it better, you know.
Yeah.
So the people were basically used as guinea pigs back in those days, the Jewish people in the days of the world wars, for biological warfare. So now we have things like mustard gas and things like Agent Orange, Monsanto, and other chemicals. You know, there are these big agencies and big organizations that spend a lot of time playing with chemicals and playing with viruses and biology. So Bill Gates spent a lot of time doing his research on these things and putting his money into labs where they were engineering these viruses and playing around with nature, and came up with this thing they call COVID-19.
Mm.
You know, Wuhan, what I've seen out of Wuhan was horrid. Martial law, among many things. You have people in hazmat suits marching the streets, spraying the streets, and rounding the people up, even welding them into their apartments, welding their doors shut to keep them locked inside, you know, so that people were not out on the streets. Anyone found out on the streets was either rounded up and isolated from the people or killed, and you ended up with dead bodies all along the sides of the roads and things. You know, some of the videos I saw were quite astonishing, but not surprising. You know, you have this big Agenda 21, you know, this plan to depopulate the earth. You know, people have been warned about this for decades. You know, these things are not a big surprise. Every time the cabal wants to do something to the people, universally speaking, universal law, they must speak it into the open before they do it. So basically, the Georgia Guidestones were a big wake-up call for a lot of people. They put it out in the open, what they wanted to do to the people. And when I look at these things, you know, I see just an ongoing pattern of depopulation over and over and over again. You know, many societies have risen and fallen. They've come and gone, you know, over thousands of years, going all the way back to the days of ancient Sumer. I mean, you have massive societies that were prospering, even in the days of Atlantis, things like that. You know, you find that these societies grew exponentially, technologically speaking, and then when they became intelligent enough to fight back, they fell. You know, they fell because the cabal did not want to lose control. So what do we do about the cabal? You know, that's a really big question. You know, what do we do about these people at the top that think they hold the most power and wealth, controlling these people?
That's it. Well, let's hope that
what they feel. Go ahead.
Let's hope that that there is a solution here. That's what Austin's talking about. And as he said, well, he didn't say it, but it's a double-edged sword. We have these technologies that are dangerous. These viruses. These people believe that we are just fodder or cattle or plants for them. That they are the stewards or the gardeners of us. So let's hope that the technology and the power to wield these technologies go into the right hands, and it's all tied in.
It's more the wisdom to handle it in the right way.
That's it. But humanity itself hasn't got the wisdom, because we're always looking, as we realize with this Q phenomenon, that we're always looking for a cult leader. We're looking to worship somebody in some way. We have to think for ourselves and act as responsible stewards of ourselves, not just to look to the God up on high or whatever. We have to look within ourselves. We've been given the gift of life and the gift of free choice. So we need to learn self-discernment, self-responsibility. We need to, all these things we need to learn very quickly, because we have been gardened, we have been stewarded through over the last centuries and thousands of years. In fact, as long as we've been here.
Well, the sad thing is, I think there's many of us who are on different, we're not all on the same level. I mean, some of us are very stuck in 3D. Some of us are very much, cruising through
levels of awareness, you mean?
Conscious awareness,
Yeah.
Ability, and that, Audrey, I think you would agree that does kind of correspond to wisdom. I don't really think that you can be wise and still stuck in 3D, because it kind of contradicts itself.
With wisdom comes enlightenment. With enlightenment comes discernment. Having that discernment over what is right and wrong. Whether to help someone or not to help someone, whether to talk to someone or not to talk to someone, to teach somebody something or to not teach them. Really depends on where the people are in their level of awakening and understanding the world around them, reality. Everything you see is basically a hologram. When you really think about it, everything at its most basic element is just made of energy, vibration, and frequency in a mix of turbulence. That's really all it is. Everything at its most basic element inside of quarks, photoradionic waves, when you really think about it, is made of just energy. So if everything is made of energy just as much as, let's say, the screens you're looking at right now on your computers, if everything is made of energy, then what is reality?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
That's the question. And then the thing is, what's the time as well? We're talking about the quantum internet, and in some of the videos he mentions, which, many of us understand, that everything is happening at once. When you access the quantum field, you have access to future, past, and present. So what does that mean for us as humans? What does that mean for us as a race? Where do we go from here? We can change the future. We can alter the past.
Yeah. Speaking of.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm sorry. This brings up another really good topic: looking glass.
That was my next topic I was going to talk about. Can we wait until Austin comes back? Because you know what I think's happened, speaking of energy? I think we might have exhausted him a little. Poor Austin's been...
We should stop for today soon.
We work him out. We really gave him a workout, didn't we? I'm sorry. Well, he'll be back. He's taking a break, but... Well, look, we're just toughing him up for some other interviews he's going to do. We're getting him ready. No, we don't need to tough him up. He's handling himself just fine. He's really doing a good job. And, the whole focus, again, was on the message over messenger. So Austin is the messenger. The message is what he's talking about.
That's right.
And so, we forget too, we're talking about Q post number 128, folks. Disinfo is necessary, right? Let's talk about post number 429 that talks about and lists all these CEO resignations. So don't say nothing's happening, right? These are things behind the scenes. There's also Q post number 918, which says, wait until you learn who's been talking to you here. And then, of course, post number 504, which says learn our comms. And of course, post number 225 says the map has 43 connections. So, I'm telling you, there's you can't pick and choose. You can't cherry pick which posts that you want, no comms outside this board, no com. And then of course, just yesterday, Austin, caught somebody on the qmap.pub page trying to kind of, alter the heading of the post to kind of make it fit their agenda. And you just can't do that, folks. You can't get so invested and lose the whole point of the mission. The whole purpose of the message is to wake people up. It's called the Great Awakening, right? So but
and to work as a team as well. We're a team humanity. We're not just individuals.
And the whole message is they want us divided. And here we're dividing ourselves because the mind control is so strong. It's so thoroughly effective. It's been so completely effective that we are dividing ourselves. The puppet masters, the controllers don't need to do anything anymore. We're all on autopilot. According to their mind control program, we're all on autopilot. We're operating and performing exactly the way they want us to. And And those who don't become targeted individuals, and you start having a lot of problems in your life, right? You start losing friends, you start getting mystery illnesses, you start being destroyed in court or financially and all these other things. Or, in some cases, people have sacrificed, like Phil Schneider as a whistleblower. It's the ultimate sacrifice, right? So it's kind of like, you know, uh, this is what happens, and in many ways this is what the court system is for. It's to kind of weed out people who could be a threat to the powers that be, to force, so it really is tyranny, and we have been hostages here, in my opinion, and we're just waiting for Austin to come back. And we're going to wrap it up after a few minutes of Austin coming back, because I'd like to kind of leave off on talking about, to finish up our conversation tonight on this looking glass technology, which is really what makes this whole the whole Q portion of it really fascinating. The whole quantum computer, quantum internet portion, really, because as he said, it's past, present, and future. So definitely this is quantum computing, and this is what looking glass is. And we do have some people in the chat who are familiar with this technology as well. And I think that would be a great topic to wrap up and end on. What do you think, Steve?
Yes. I'm sorry. I was just reading on. It's not. I thought it was Prometheus database. It's Promethease. Promethease.dna database. Sorry, I completely missed what you were saying. I'm sorry.
Steve, it's 3:00 in the morning there. I certainly don't blame you. You're okay. It's okay. You can doze off. You can totally lose it. It's fine. We're going to be wrapping it up. So as soon as Austin,
He's back.
Yeah, as soon as he puts his gets his microphone back, we'll get Austin. I thought I'm sorry if we we were a little rough on you. I mean, we've really been kind of,
no worries.
We've been wearing you out, but it's all in good faith. And,
yeah, no, awesome.
Yeah. And,
so one thing I wanted to jump in with real quick, just because we left off on it, and I kind of want to pick back up real quick.
Sure.
So I want to just speak to false flags real quick, and speak to Las Vegas real quick.
Okay.
Right.
So there's a lot of obviously misconceptions, misinformation out there about false flags. So I just wanted to say that just because something is a staged false flag, right? Just because they like remote control some psycho and they have like this whole PR campaign and like everything is like set up in advance, that for them to politically capitalize on it doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't real casualties as a result of it. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and that's in general term. So try to keep that in mind. Like, there's a lot of things that have been false flags, and yeah, that's a staged attack. Yeah, it's a racket, but it's also like has real casualties.
Right.
So that's just quick note for false flags. Moving into the Las Vegas thing, just 'cause I think there's a lot of theories out there about that, right? So important context for the Vegas situation was that the Mandalay Bay, like on top of it, the top few floors of it is a Four Seasons, and that Four Seasons is owned by the Saudi royal family. So the Mohammed bin Salman, right? He's been part of his own Game of Thrones in his own country, right? So the way Saudi Arabia has worked in the past, right? There was the original guy, and then he had a bunch of sons, right? And it went from the dad to son number 1 to son number 2 to son, so it kind of goes.
Yep.
It's not vertical; it's like kind of horizontal. Their line of succession, how that works. And so Mohammed bin Salman cut in line a bunch of his relatives. So a big part of the first part of, I guess, last few years, as far as he's concerned, has been not getting killed by his relatives and the people, therefore, and like supporters of so he can do the things he's trying to do to change Saudi Arabia, right? Aramco just IPO'd. And so he was in Vegas that night, and he was supposed to be at that Four Seasons, and he wasn't. he was off in the casino. I know if you guys have seen the footage from where he's in the casino, a bunch of FBI agents are charged, and he's in like plain clothes. He's looking like a little dork.
Yes. And with the machine guns, right? He had bodyguards escorting him. Is that?
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that I'm going to get into all the exact details right now, but that the Las Vegas shooting wasn't like a mass shooter attack. It was an assassination attempt that went wrong when they realized he wasn't in the casino at the time. Okay. And if you've noticed, like the Vegas police, when they were giving the press conference, you can always tell the local police are look like they just like saw a ghost, right? And they have to go lie to everybody. Like, oh, we don't know what happened. Oh my God. So he was super scared. And the reason that it got covered up, right, is because if you're the king, it's just like this way in the UK too. If you're the king of that country, you're not just the king of Saudi Arabia, you're like the head of their religion. So him being in the casino, right, doing haram,
wasn't a good thing.
Yeah, that could dramatically jeopardize his like ability to like.
Yep.
So that's the reason they covered it up like that. But I think, like, moving forward, if our people are getting killed because of foreigners' Game of Thrones, like we're not lying to people anymore. You know what I mean? Like if he's off breaking his own rules of his own religion and his own secession, then that's freaking his problem, right? Like that's not our problem. And the fact that, you know, now American companies are getting sued by the victims for being negligent, even though they were just victimized by an intelligence operation, and, you know, all the cameras and stuff are, you know, when you have that national security, that D6 classification, you can just shut anyone up, like throw away the key, national security, right? And so we just keep doing this over and over and over again. And like, it's not our job to protect those royals. If those royals don't act right, if those royals get sideways with their people, like that's their problem, not ours. And we're not going to be doing that anymore. If any of those worthless royals are listening right now, we're not covering for you anymore. If you mess up, like, you're on your own. So like, and things, we are going to be getting justice for Americans. That is my priority, is getting justice for Americans and making sure that, you know, we can't, and one of the reasons I call it Westworld is, if you ever seen that show on HBO, how there's like all the kind of like sentient robots that they're in these little loops, and the people that visit the amusement park, just like kill them or do whatever they want to them. So that's kind of why I call it Westworld, is because like we have these, especially royals, like if you're part of a royal family, you have diplomatic immunity anywhere you go, right? Like, so they could just run wild, do whatever they want, kill as many people as they want, rape as many people as they want, sell as many drugs as they want, do whatever, and there's nothing we can do to prosecute them, which is totally preposterous. But the good news is that we baited the UK into, there was just like some car accident with some diplomat, where we baited them into setting the precedent of breaking diplomatic immunity to prosecute someone, like trying to make that, by making an American come back and face the consequences of their actions. So all the operators still out there for the Royal Death Racket that didn't heed my warning before, just know that your diplomatic immunity is adios. We're coming at you.
Okay.
So
Austin's owning it. I just wanted to say that it's been a while. We've been on for a while, and I do appreciate you staying on. And to wrap this up, we wanted, you know, the last topic we wanted to just talk about was, there's a lot to talk about, folks. I see all the comments in the chat. People are so excited. We've got over 600 in the live chat, and we are doing, you know, they are so excited to have this chance to kind of interact with you on the live stream. But the last topic is Looking Glass, and I think one of our super soldiers, Duncan O'Finian, wants to jump in. You know, in the last, he might be jumping in because KP had to step out, so he might jump in because he does know something about this. Yeah, I know. He'll be back. Thanks.
Next time.
And you're so, Austin, you're just so open and honest. I mean, you're like, it seems like, I don't know, you said you didn't like it, and I don't know if you were expecting to have to like really open your life to your DNA and your health issues for the world,
that.
But
you have. That we were gonna like keep things a secret, but the thing is, like, there's so many. terrible things still happening, that unless we can like get the word out to everyone, and so people are on the lookout for like, no, this is not acceptable anymore, like then it would be really hard to
okay, so
ever change.
Right. If Duncan doesn't make it in, it's okay. But we also, when you were taking your break, Audrey jumped in, and he wanted to talk about Looking Glass. So go ahead, Audrey, if you had some questions or you wanted to for Austin.
I'll answer as much as I can, because that's still
I understand. You just tell us where you have to say, but your boundaries, that's fine. But we have some other people too that know some other things, and you just do what you have to do. Go ahead, Audrey.
Well, imagine for a moment with Looking Glass having the power to, let's say, look back into the past to see someone who may have passed you by, or look into the future to see somebody who will pass you by, to infect them ahead of time and have them cross your path. Or let's say, for instance, with Looking Glass, being able to see everybody in your timeline that you will interact with, and to use them against you in some way. Looking Glass is about being able to see into the past and the future. And the technology, it does exist. And the way it works, they use the fact that all time exists at the same time. They use frequency, just like turning the dial of a radio to change the channel. Every single frame of time is marked by its own specific frequency. So if you know how to use that, you can, let's say, put in a specific frequency for your machine to see, and it will tune into that ahead of time, and be able to see what's in the future. Now, my question to you is, what are your thoughts on Looking Glass and the way that the government used it to their advantage?
Well, there's been this kind of like dueling death match, is my best way to describe, between CIA and DIA. And obviously every time there's adjustments made in the past, things shift. So it's been this like crazy showdown that you try to, if there's any adjustments, you try to like keep them as minimal as possible, right? So that there's not like this crazy bad butterfly effect, and then all these other variables that you have to like
a mess you have
then
to
account for, right? Yeah. So like so people don't realize like and this is one of the problems with like how our culture is now. Like you don't realize like how like unique and how like important you are as like an individual to like the whole. So if a guy, just some random guy walking down the road 1,000 years ago, a rock moves 3 feet to the right and he trips over it and hits his head and dies, that could disappear an entire country. So people, we just have this culture that like minimalizes the individual and like makes you kind of like feel like worthless, but they don't realize like how important every single person is to the big picture scheme of things, right? Because it's we could do all the trash pickup programs we want, for example, but the easiest way to like keep things clean is just teach people to like throw trash away. It will, every person contributes to the whole, and every person is an important part of the big picture. And hopefully we can kind of like get everybody to see that, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are struggling with anxiety, with depression, with all this stuff, and they feel very like low self-worth, self-esteem. And if they understood, I feel like it's just you're not mathematically like aware of what the chances of your existence even are if you don't realize like how awesome this is, that the fact that you're even alive is amazing, right? Every single one of us, if our parents had sex 10 minutes later than they did, you wouldn't exist, right? It would just be something else. So and that's just one ring up the ladder. So think about all like throughout history, all the crazy stuff your ancestors have had to deal with, have had to like get through, all the times they barely survived and fought, and even though like they had a really grueling life, like they fought to live another day, and they kind of like passed the baton of life to the next generation, right? And I think just having that frame of mind of like, wow, this just the chances of me being alive, this is so amazing. Like I'm like trillion times as lucky as the people who win the lottery, because the chances of me being alive are so, like, to have the sun on my face, to just like have the opportunity to
be alive,
you know, try to make it, try to do my thing is incredible, right? Because even before humans, right, like anything could have happened, and all this crazy huge picture got us to where we were today. So if we can try to help teach people, like, you as an individual, you have a lot of intrinsic value. You are an extremely rare, you know, valuable thing, and you must be, just the fact that you are alive right now, there's something that you're good at, right? There's some way you can contribute. There's something that you're good at. Otherwise, you'd have been dead, right? Like, you wouldn't be here. If there wasn't something inside of you that made you awesome, like, you just obviously have to find out that everybody has their own things, right? And especially now, we're such a diverse. So you got to find your thing, you know, live your life to maximize, you know, every organism on Earth is a specialist in some way, right? So you got to figure out what you're good at, and you got to specialize in that, and realize that, you know, your life is very important. Your life is very meaningful as an individual. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. I don't care, like, you know, what's going on. Like, every single person dramatically influences the big picture if you look at the whole grand scheme of, like, all of life. So we got to start acting that way, right? And start all caring about, like, hey, look, our better future is all of our job, right? And I'm just a guy, right? I'm going to be here for, you know, in the grand scheme of things, a tiny amount of time. And if nothing else, I want, my goal is to make like, have a legacy of, like, empowering, like, making people understand their own intrinsic worth and their own ability to contribute to the world at large. No matter how small they feel, no matter how, whatever situation you're coming from, no matter how poor, rich, smart, dumb, like, there's something that you could do. There's something that you're good at, and you just got to figure it out. So
that's the thing. We've been taught through religion, whatever, that we're so insignificant, that we're so small, and it's the opposite, isn't it? So can you give us a small example? This boxing match between DIA and CA. I've got to ask the question. As a small example of what they've screwed up or what's happened. They've knocked a rock or something small.
So.
Something public.
Yeah. So let's talk about, like, the recent, like, what's the most visible in my opinion is the Air Force and, like, Team Satan. They've wanted to control space, right?
Yep.
And, like, make sure that, because they run a lot of their rackets through graft off of space programs. So the most flamboyant examples, in my opinion, are how many SpaceX rockets have been blown up. Not just on the launch pad, but in the sky, like, where there'll be the streaking down, and, like,
very coincidental.
We won't get like lots of explanations about that, but, like, it's hard to describe, like, how much SpaceX and the Space Force has been sabotaged by our own military and our own people, right? Like, so there's been this really epic back and forth of, like, you know, obviously defense contractors, they want to defend their turf and not let any newcomers come on the scene, but they just wax us, like, cheat us, take our money, like, waste it, make no effort to actually do real things in space and advance scientific understanding of things. And it's just like, we're done with it, right? So the SpaceX is kind of like bypassing them, and you know, if you guys, like, you held up, like, you had all the power before, right? Because you're the defense contractor, you make all the weapons, and you have the people with the power on your side. Like, what are you going to do to stop them? So you just kind of had to develop this alternative track. And it's been really, SpaceX especially, I can't tell you how much they've been sabotaged to Kingdom Come by everything under the sun. And Elon's I know he's not always viewed, like, people look at various associations he's had over the years or whatever, and they, like, project, they feel like he might be one of those evil billionaires. But I just hope all those people realize that, like, without Elon being a white hat, like, none of this would have been possible. So a lot of us, myself included, right? I'm dealing, you know, associating with the drug cartels and stuff. Like none of us, Trump was associating with who, like Soros and those kind of people, Kushner too. But there's no way to like get close to people unless you do that. So I hope people can like keep that in context of like looking at the big picture here and looking at the players and looking at like you do what you got to do to get access to
the goal.
Get access to so you can move the chain. So we're trying to get past some of these superficial signals like pictures of people or like hand signals of silly stuff because a lot of people like are just, you know, idiots that they just make they don't know what any of these symbols mean, right? So it's not, there's a lot of extra stuff in there that isn't necessarily nefarious. It's just them doing what they saw some other person that is nefarious doing, right? Like, so hopefully like this is where the discernment and the think for yourself kind of comes in of we got to make sure we're not
demonizing the wrong people.
And we got to also make sure we're not going after categories, right? We're going after individuals.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Good point.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people, it's a rumor, but I mean, a lot of people think that Elon Musk is Nikola Tesla reincarnated, and maybe that's for the next interview. We could talk about things like Antarctica. We could talk about Antarctica. We could talk about Avatar, the movies,
on and on,
all the disclosure in all the movies and all that other stuff, all the good stuff. So I just want to thank Austin. I really appreciate your,
thanks for being here.
Complete openness, your honesty, your candidness, and really honestly the sacrifices you're making, because I'm sure this has not been what you've been expecting. And hi Cynthia dear, I'm so glad to see you. I'm sorry, I had to say I'm seeing so many people that we know and hear, and I want to thank all of our live chat members who are here with their questions and comments too. They've been definitely a very big part of this. But Austin, you've really handled every question wonderfully, and I really hope you'll come back and do another interview with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have you out to Arizona sometime to check out the Space Force stuff with us once that all gets more ramped up. Obviously, we got a big job ahead of us, like kind of laying the public opinion groundwork for like destroying the CIA and the Air Force, right? Disbanding them and moving into new things. So that's kind of like what we have on our plate at the moment, is just really trying to explain to people like, no, this is necessary. Like dramatic steps are extreme. Like if we don't, like we're dying, right? It's not just America. Like America's also dying, but the world is dying.
The planet's
and
the planet.
If we don't do something to dramatically change things right now. Yeah. So hopefully everybody can kind of take that with the grain of sand. I know I get a lot of hate from the traditional Q horde or the big name influencers. Like he's a CIA agent. He's like a closet lefty. It's like, come on, guys. Like, so I'm a CIA agent that is like, airing all the dirty laundry of the CIA and calling for their removal and like, giving you all the specifics and do all. It's just like, come on, guys. Like, let's think this through a little bit more. And I mean, I've used some symbols and stuff to antagonize people or to like maybe appeal to lefties in other cases. But the whole point of that is like, we got to get everyone on board, right? We need this overwhelming democratic mandate for this to stick, for this to work well. Unless they just want us to do the, the king thing where we're just going, who doesn't like us, just kill them all, and we're gonna coerce you and do it. That's how it is in the past. So we're trying to turn over a new leaf for the future by just showing you the evidence, and we're gonna be, like I said, it's gonna be an ongoing thing. So even after QAnon, we're gonna be, doing YouTube stuff and showing you guys cool Space Force stuff, and just trying to point out, to the kids of tomorrow, like, hey, these are some of the problems that we're working on, and if you're coming up, this is a reason to care about school, that because you can help us with these problems and you can kind of go in this direction. So we're gonna have a good time, and I'll definitely come back, talk to you guys again. After this is all over, I'll have to have you guys out to Arizona, and appreciate the love and the tough questions, and I also appreciate everyone helping me get the word out, right? Because it is kind of an out there kind of subject matter, and it's tough because there's a lot of resistance, and you get people kind of are like, yeah, you're crazy. So just having people that are, grounded enough to just stand their ground in the facts and help us push for that better future. I can't tell you how much each and every one of you matter, and that's kind of like the 3-6-9 thing. It's kind of like the exponential growth sort of a deal, right? if every one of you convinces one person, and then they go convince one person, and then it just builds super quick.
Exactly.
So I appreciate all of you tremendously, and we'll definitely be back. We'll definitely continue to just kind of spread the word, and thanks for staying up late with us over there in Austria. I bet it's getting pretty late over there.
It's late, baby.
Yeah, but I appreciate
it's quite
you
late.
guys, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you very much for having me.
Ciao, Austin.
All right. Well, I just wanted to say that the GoldFish Report is happy to go out and do some photo documentary work for the Space Force and for because I think it's very exciting. And also, we wouldn't, certainly any job openings for public relations would be we could submit our resume for that.
Well, we're trying
but anyway,
to make it
I'm just saying
we're trying to remake public relations to be like a more like so the people who are doing the good work on YouTube that the other people like, that's who should be popular, right? Like not the talking heads that got arbitrarily forced there. So I think we're gonna be trying to do like turn news into a more like democratic thing, and have the popular people and they're doing good work be the ones that are coming along with us on all the cool trips and missions and so on and so forth. So we'll definitely be keeping you in mind in the future. Cool. Appreciate your help, and we'll keep it going.
Cool.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up, folks. Audrey Ewis, thank you so much for also joining us as well, and I want to thank Kawhi Pele.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're just saying good night to everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're just closing out. And thank you for simulcasting this, Audrey, and to thank everybody. Steve, thank you so much for staying up so late. And Austin, thank you very much. We will see you again. And everybody, this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report. Thanks for viewing. Okay. We're still closing out our live.